Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I see all you guys in the chat, and some of you said you're not having the best week, which I understand. It's crappy for a lot of people, but hopefully your week will get better and you guys enjoy yourselves in the stream tonight. So, anyways, the title of the stream, What Guns Should You Buy Now? I think this will be an interesting topic. We're not like saying panic buying, like you have to buy all these guns right now, but there's kind of some perspective that I think that we'll have to offer you. So I'm going to bring on Chris, who's my good friend with the Marksman TV channel. A lot of you guys love him. I'm definitely a huge fan. So let's bring him on here. And there you are. How's it going,
Hey,
man?
how's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
All right, I'm good now. I have my volume turned down. How's it going, dude?
How's it going, man? How you doing?
Good.
Good.
I turned my volume down, guys. I'm sorry, because I was getting all these Windows alerts, and I'm like, now I can't hear him.
It's always something.
So yeah, man, what's been happening lately since I was down there in Indiana?
Not a whole lot. I've been super busy. A lot of people who watch my channel know we've got a big launch of something I can't really talk about on YouTube, but a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about, and that's actually happening tomorrow morning. So we've been scrambling like crazy to get that ready to go, and it'll be ready to go tomorrow.
All right, guys. So here's the deal. We call her Susan Wiki, right? Her and her teams. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream tonight, by the way. We can't promote certain things on here, but I will tell you guys this. Those of you who've been following his channel, go check it out tomorrow. He's really excited about the new venture that he's launching. And I'm going to make a post of that link on Locals. So if you guys are either kind of new here or new to the Marksman TV channel, definitely go sub to his channel. His content's awesome. And then for all of you that follow me on Locals, I'm going to put a comment out there. I'll put a quick post up talking about stuff that we can't promote on YouTube, if you know what I'm saying, right? So I'd like to thank all you guys for being here tonight. You guys are like totally awesome. And as always, I just want to thank all of the ways you guys support the channel, all the Patreon supporters. I see tons of channel members here in the chat, people over there on Locals. You guys are like totally awesome. And check this out. I have like 6 videos literally sitting in, we call it the Susan Court of Appeals. So they're uploaded to YouTube, right? The algorithm already deemed them restricted, but I've put my appeal in. And she just let one out. So I may put out a video again Saturday or Sunday. And we might have another 3 or 4 or 5 videos next week if you guys want it. So let me know down there in the chat what you guys are thinking. So I know you get tons and tons of questions, and you kind of wear both hats. You're a content creator and a gun shop owner. But me, from my end, people are kind of like, I don't know. They're kind of like wondering what they should be doing right now. You know, like they're kind of in the doldrums. So let me pose this a couple ways to you, and I really want to get your input. There's some people that are kind of bummed out. You know, I put out a video, 5 AKs you've never heard of, just because I wanted to share some of my collection that was bought a long time ago. And people are like, man, but I can't get this stuff. I'll never be able to get a good gun again. So there's that group of people. Then there's another group of people. They're just kind of new. They got into guns in the last year and a half, and they're like, what do I do right now? Is right now the time to buy? Is it not? So I just get a bunch of people that are just kind of, I don't know, they're just kind of wanting to talk about it. Have you been kind of getting people wondering what's going on too?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of a crazy time over the past year and a half with gun purchasing, hasn't it? So I think we all feel that for sure. Because I'm not just somebody who buys and sells guns. I'm into guns myself. There's guns that I personally want to buy, and it is painful watching the pricing go up. A lot of people ask, the gun dealer, yeah, you probably like seeing higher prices because you make more money. That's not true. The margins stay the same. We just means we're paying more for what we get, and then we have to sell it for more because we're paying more to get it. What is the market going to do? That's always a question. I mean, that's the $1 million question. You never really know when you try and speculate on where is a good place to put your money in terms of a firearm purchase. And if you want to get into investment or not investment, I guess that's a different topic. But you kind of have to formulate your strategy based on your past experiences. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking past experiences all the way back to like 1989, 1994, when the assault, like the import ban and the assault weapons ban went into place. You could get Norinco Chinese AKs, pre-ban AKs for they were like $200 to $400 back then, which with inflation, I don't know about what that would be now, maybe $1,000 today. But now they're $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on the market because they're not coming in. Now, nobody could have anticipated it, that happening back then. But the question always becomes with looming legislation is, are we currently in a pre-ban period that we just don't know yet?
Yep.
Are we currently in a position to buy pre-ban guns? In the year 2040, will we be looking back at 2022 Polish Beryl AKs as pre-ban AKs that, man, I wish I got one of those back in the day. But it's also a hard pill to swallow with getting a pop-up with, the raising prices due to inflation. So there's so many variables there that are really hard to digest.
Yeah, and I think both of us have, look, guys, we're not here to predict the future, but I will say a couple things. I've been in a milsurp since 1994, and I see these different patterns. How's it going, Ray? Nice to see you. So, I've seen patterns, and here's what I'm going to tell you guys. And we'll get into this discussion. This is a good topic, I think. The quick answer is yes. I still think there are pre-bans of tomorrow available today. Definitely, 100%. And I remember you came on this stream. It was actually all the way back in June. Like, time flies. And here's what you said on that stream. You said, guys, gun prices are going to be coming down. You could see the writing on the wall, but ammo is going to take longer. And yeah, dude, you were like 100% spot on. Like, it was within like little, here's what I said. I'm going to confess to you. Don't get mad at me and leave the stream. I'm like, oh, he's full of crap. How can this come down? I thought that just for a brief moment. Because like the day you were on my stream, they hadn't come down yet. But I swear it was within 1 to 2 weeks. I was watching guns start to drop 10%, 20%, 30%, even 50%. So I think you have quite a bit of perspective on this, right?
Well, it's predictable. There was a massive surge in demand due to, I don't know what you want to call it, the virus or people afraid because of rioting, whatever it was. We all felt it. It was a shockwave that went through the industry. Everybody was buying everything. I sold out of every inventory item I had, gun or ammunition, in 5 days. In 5 days, I sold everything I had when that whole thing kicked off. That's absolutely not normal. When demand spikes like that, there's this huge desire to pump inventory into the market. And that's what all the manufacturers and ammo suppliers were trying to do. Now, there's usually going to be a lag when capacity is built and that stuff is put back into the market. By the time that actually hits through the supply chain to the end consumer, we're already starting to see a drop off in the demand because people calm down. People aren't afraid anymore. The rioting is all over. People are less concerned about the virus. People are getting vaccinated, whether you think that helps or it doesn't help, but it's at least calming down the news cycle a little bit. And, there's this sort of calming down effect that's happening, and you can feel gun purchasing slow down. I have my finger on the pulse. That's what I do every day. I know how many guns are selling because I'm in the middle of the market. So in any type of commodity business, when demand starts slowing down at the same time that manufacturers are pumping inventory into the market, you're going to hit a period of oversupply. And that happened. And the only way to get all of that stuff out of the supply chain is to lower the prices to incentivize the buyers that are still out there to go out and purchase.
Okay, so first of all, you guys are learning stuff here tonight. And by the way, let's go, Brandon, everybody. All you guys in the chat, I see you guys trying to start trouble, Max shot. But anyways, you guys are learning stuff you're not going to learn in Harvard Business School, because this is kind of like a real meat and potatoes way that our economy works. But let me ask you this, Chris, because I think you have a good perspective, more than me anyways, on this. Maybe like last year, the year before, you had people coming into your shop saying, I need a gun right now. And they might have used the word need. Are they doing that as much, or are they more like, maybe I'd like to get this in the future? Is there kind of a difference there?
That's a good question. I would say yes, but in not so plain terms.
Okay.
I have, going into before the whole spike in purchasing, I had a certain segment of customers that I was very familiar with. They were people who would come in all the time. They were people who I knew. And you can kind of tell they're gun people by the way they talk, the way they dress, the way that how they talk about guns. They know kind of what they're talking about. They've had purchasing experiences before. That was like 90% of the demographic I worked with was gun people. Okay, it was people who had a general understanding of the market. when that whole thing kicked off, and like I said, we sold out of firearms in 5 days, it was a total flip. It was 90% people who you could just tell they were not gun people. They were first-time buyers. They were in a gun shop for the first time. They were freaking out and they needed something. And the people who were gun buyers were like, this is crazy. First of all, I have a collection of guns. I have thousands of rounds of ammunition. I don't need to be in a gun store right now. The lines are insanely long. The prices are getting insanely high. So we're going to chill out and not go in. So for that period of time, I wasn't seeing my regulars. I wasn't seeing those gun people come into my store. I was seeing all new faces, and definitely a type of buyer that I was not at all used to dealing with. And that's, to answer your question, yes, but it was more of a demographic shift.
Well, how many of you guys in the chat? And let us know, because again, we might not be able to read them all live right now, but I read all these over the weekend. I really do. And thanks for all the wonderful chat that you guys left me last week. I love you guys to death, by the way. Tons of encouragement. But let us know in the chat right now, how many of you were that person? You weren't a quote gun person. You might have been kind of neutral to the fact. And now that you're still here on this channel, certainly a year and a half later, I'm assuming you are. So let me know who all the noobs are. That's a blunt way of me asking that, right? But I don't know. See, here's the problem with me, though. I'm not only just a gun fanatic personally, and I have guns that I do buy personally, guys, for myself with my own money. And then you guys help me out with a lot of the stuff that I do on the channel. So I was still stuck in those lines and buying stuff during the panic because this audience here are nice people, but they weren't going to cut me slack and not let me review any new guns for a year and a half, right? So I had to buy guns at panic prices and all that too, right? With the rest of you guys. I get it, trust me. Raw Feeding 101, thanks for the super chat, man. How you doing? And shout out to your channel. Seriously, guys, real quick. I know you hear me say this, but it's true. If you have dogs and you want them to eat healthy, definitely check out his channel. He's literally one of the most foremost experts like in the world on this topic. So go check him out if you guys are dog people. Awesome guy. Nice to see you, man. But so what have you noticed though? Okay, so, and I mean this affectionately, guys, the noobs, the whatevers, you know. Let's go, Brandon. I just saw somebody else in the chat say that. You guys are awesome. So how many of those people though, the familiar faces are back, but how many of those newbies are now familiar faces? Is there anybody like that?
Yeah, so another thing to go along with how we can see the pricing coming down and gun inventory is starting to come back is now I don't see those kind of new buyers and get those new buyers very often. I'm back to all my regulars coming back in because things are calm. Prices are coming down a little bit. Inventory is way up, especially in my store. But I will say that I have probably now at least, probably more, but probably at least 10 or 15 people that went way off the deep end, even worse than me. Talk about jumping into the Second Amendment with both feet, where I had one guy who I'm not going to say his name, but I don't know if he watches or not, but he came in. I remember the first thing he was asking about was Mossberg shotguns, and this has been about a year. Well, this is right when everything started. He went and he got one online and got it sent to my store. And then there was another one that came to my store. And then he started buying guns from me. And I think since then, I mean, the guy's probably bought 50 firearms. And he got his first one transferred to me. It was a Mossberg 500. Handguns, rifles, CZs, Scorpions. I mean, everything. The guy's gone insane. And he comes in now and tells me, he's like, you know, he's really gotten into it. He's always reading and watching videos. And he comes in and did you see this new, I heard about the Springfield Hellion for the first time from him. And he comes in and starts telling me about all these articles he's reading and these different, sites that are out there on the market. And he's just gone way overboard with it, which is totally awesome. And he's probably the most extreme example of that. There's probably about 15 other people who have bought at least five or six more since.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I mean,
which is awesome. And that's what I said about what was so great about that experience was, yeah, it was really bad. We did pay the price as a community for having a lack of supply with ammunition and firearms and prices going up. But I think we added a lot of people to the ranks of this community, which inevitably in the long run will help us all. And, supply, if the whole community, if the whole gun purchasing community is that much bigger, say it grew 10%, 5%, whatever, capacity from everybody will increase. There will be, equilibrium will be met with supply eventually, to meet all those new buyers. And in the long run, it's better for us all.
Okay, so I think at this point, we're kind of to the point where, okay, maybe we'll call it the panic buying's over for the most part. And we're seeing guns coming back on the shelves. And I'm noticing guns have been pretty much ever since they were at their peak. And then it was right around the time last summer when you were on here, they started to taper off. And it seems like right now they're still slightly tapering a little bit more every week. Now, it's too good to be true, maybe. I don't think they're going to keep on tapering down. And here's my guess, and I want to see what you have to say about this. So here's where we were. Let me back up. You could get a cheap Turkish pump action shotgun for $99 the day before the Flugaloo, I call it, hit. At one point in time, they were up to maybe closer to 300. Right now, they're down to like 150. And I'm using round numbers, but I think I'm pretty close. Do we keep waiting for that Turkish shotgun to come back to 99 like it was pre-Flugaloo? Or if we want one, is it kind of time to be thinking about moving on it because of all these other factors with our economy?
I'm gonna answer that. I just want to point out one comment that I'm reading here. It's from Scott Plagman. It says the Antifa BLM riots were the best thing that could have happened to the Second Amendment scene. One thing I want to mention about that is since all of that happened, how much anti-gun rhetoric have you guys been hearing come from politicians? I think we're still getting it, but the mainstream narrative, I think, is toned down quite a bit since all of that. And I think that there's a reason for that. Just something to think about in the back of your head. But I think we did push a lot of people off the fence. And a lot of people started, people were flocking to the gun stores because it became real it was in everybody's backyard all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And when it's in your backyard and the Second Amendment becomes a personal issue to you, that's when you join the supporting of the Second Amendment. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I have seen the anti-gun sort of narrative taper back nationally. We're hearing mostly everything about COVID. That's kind of the new thing to beat the war drum about. But I don't know if you've noticed the same thing. But
yeah, so I'll say one more quick thing about that before you answer the next one. So first of all, thanks for another super chat, Raw Feeding 101. Were any newbies surprised about the NICS process?
Yes. Absolutely, yes.
They thought you could just buy, well, remember former president, whatever you even want to call him, we'll just say Obama, back when the former vice president was actually the vice president, guys. He said it's easier to buy a gun than it is a book. Do you remember all that rhetoric in the past?
Yeah, I remember it was 41P passed. And for those of you who don't know, with the NFA, for a suppressor, an SBR, an SBS, or a machine gun, you could get a trust. And with the trust, you could go through the Form 4, Form 1 process. And anybody on your trust, like your wife, your brother, your husband, whoever, if you got possession of that suppressor, that NFA item, by virtue of them being on your trust, they could have access to it. They could take it to a range without you being there. If you passed away, they could take possession of it. You could put anybody on the trust, and when you went through the NFA process, only you had to be approved for that item, and then it could be put on your trust. 41P required, and this is actually like put into place by Obama, like in his last 6 months of his final year in office.
Yeah.
It made it so everybody on your trust, no matter who was on the trust, one person, 5 people, they all had to submit responsible person questionnaires, fingerprints, and photos, and also be checked since they had access to it. And I remember he did a roundtable town hall sort of thing, and somebody asked him about that, and he said, with this, now you can't just go buy an Uzi off of any street corner. And I'm like, that's such a false equivalence, because people going through the NFA process are not purchasing Uzis on street corners. That's why they're going through the NFA process. Right. But it's just such a, disingenuous argument. But yeah, because of that constant, deluge of misinformation about how easy it is to get a firearm, we would have people get delayed. We had somebody get denied, and there was always kind of this deer in the headlights kind of look, like, what is this? What is this paperwork? What do you mean I'm delayed? And I saw a lot of that. It was actually kind of funny, but a good opportunity to educate people on the truth and the reality of what it takes to actually purchase and own a firearm in this country legally.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there were people who had an epiphany, especially if they were a little more on the left and they were more inclined to listen to their rhetoric in the past. They probably thought to themselves, wait a minute, how could you delay me? I'm this, I'm that. It's like, yeah, that's what we've all been dealing with forever. We're all good people too. And It's just a bunch of rigmarole. And I think a lot of people got their eyes open to that, right?
Wasn't there a reporter that went to Chicago or something like 2 or 3 years ago, and he was doing a story on how easy it is to get a gun, and he literally got denied on his background check, like while he was doing the story?
Yes, he did. And he proved the irony was pretty thick in that. Yes.
Yeah.
Max Shock wants to have a flash mob. Well, hey, last time I went down there, I told you guys I was going down, and one person did come there to see me, and it was awesome. So,
yeah, we did just do that.
yes. So maybe we will have one in the future. But back to my question here. So, look, cheap shot. We're just going to go with one thing, and we could go with a bunch of it. G2C, whatever. But Turkish shotgun, $99 pre-Flugaloo. It went up to almost 300. Now it's down to 150. Is it going to come back to $99 again anytime soon or ever?
No, there's more factors at play than just the demand in the market. We've seen crazy amounts of inflation, so prices on a lot of things, raw material, supply chain costs have gone up, and that's going to be true across any sector of any commodity or good. So firearms are no exception. There's two things that generally that deem what the price is. Number one is, what is the bare minimum of the cost of manufacturing that item? It's the raw material, that's the manufacturing cost, and that's your distribution cost. That can only come so low in any market, especially if there's pressures on any of those three aspects coming from anything. Then after that, it's the demand. Once you have your base product out into the market, the manufacturers, the retailers have a little bit of latitude with where they are pricing, and that's generally in correlation with demand. So if you have your cost of your good here and demand is really, really driving the price way up, then you can be up here in a heightened period of demand. As demand starts coming down, that's when your price drops, but it'll only come so far as down to your cost if you want to break even just to move your product or even lose. But if they're going to make money, they got to be at least 10, 15% over cost. And the cost of those goods is just up right now. That's true anywhere. So no, I don't think it'll come back down to that. It's kind of impossible. And I think we're sort of plateauing in a lot of regards because demand has really been down pretty consistently for about the past 6 months.
I agree. And just look at it outside of guns and ammo. Go buy a pound of bacon right now compared to what it cost a year and a half ago. A gallon of milk, a gallon of gasoline. I have friends in the fabricating business now that no longer keep certain inventory in stock for customers. Everything's on demand because a thick piece of steel could go up 10% randomly in a day, which maybe that would be a big price increase in the past for it to go up 10% over a quarter. So that's putting them further behind. It's making them charge more. They're not doing those big bulk purchases because of such volatility in steel. Well, there's a lot of raw resources used to make guns, right?
Right. And there's distribution costs and labor is going up. I mean, labor is getting very expensive right now. There's a ton of unemployment. People are choosing not to work, and people are only going back to work for very high wages. And you're seeing help wanted signs everywhere, which is driving the labor cost up on everything. So, and labor costs affect everybody at every level, from manufacturing to distribution to transportation and different logistics to the point of sale retail. If your gun store is having to pay their clerks $15 to $20 an hour, their prices are going to go up too. So you're going to get hit at every level through the supply chain. And so it's kind of a mess right now in the economy. And I think that's also partially, well, not partially, but a big part of what's going on at play with the pricing, because demand-driven pricing on guns right now isn't a lot of the contributing factor, because demand has actually been down for quite a while.
Yeah, and here's the thing, guys. So here's a bit of bad news from my perspective, but some good news right after. Depends how you want to look at it. Here's the bad news. We all like to talk about the good old days. I don't see us getting back to the good old days anytime soon. Not in the next few years, anyways. Not at least in the next 3 years. Very least, case scenario. Because look at this former vice president. You guys think, I mean, he may have gotten rid of corn pop, but we're going to suffer in many ways. He was a bad dude, and everything's gone up in price.
He was a bad dude.
And hung with some bad boys. But here's the thing, guys.
Straight razors.
Straight razors. And the former vice president.
Yeah, the pool chain.
Yeah, he went down to the pool, and
look,
you got to laugh at this stuff. It's not a laughing matter, but you have to laugh, right? So here's what I'm thinking right now. Some people are sitting there still telling me, I want to get another gun, but I'm going to wait till prices come back to what they were in the good old days. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be waiting. Not
No.
trying to panic you guys, but what are you waiting for? I think actually, and here's where this is bad news and good news, okay? Here's how I'm looking at it. It's bad news that you're not going to get it probably for the price, maybe never again, maybe not in the near future of what you could get it for a year and a half ago. But here's the good news. You could buy it today at the price that will be a steal maybe a year and a half from now. Have you thought about it that way?
Markets, they go like this, but they go like this along a upward curve.
They never go all the way back.
The bottom of this peak will never be as low as, the bottom of this peak will never be as low as the one before it.
Yes.
Or a trough, I should say.
Yep.
But the peak of the next one will always be higher. So we could be in a trough of a current demand cycle that's still priced higher than it was in a demand slump back during, when they called it the Trump slump, okay? Because price and demand was massively low for a period. After President Trump was elected, demand dropped by about 33%. It was a third, which, to put that in perspective for you guys, that was a loss of demand greater than what the airlines experienced after 9/11. That's how bad the gun industry was hit after President Trump was elected, because you had 8 years of anti-gun rhetoric, and all of a sudden it was like, we're putting a stop to this. That was a big part of his campaign. And people said, okay, great. We don't have to worry about this. I'll just go buy something when I need it or want it or whatever. So we could be, I think we are in a demand slump now, which, the pricing is still not going to be as low as the previous one. But when the next peak of the huge demand jump hits, It will be worse, and the prices will be higher than at the height of the last one. And that's just generally how those curves go.
Yes, and I'm look, some of you guys that have been around this longer than both of us combined, not trying to bore you guys, but this channel's always been about encouraging the newer people. I just wanted people that are kind of new to this to realize, because this is what happens in the gun community. Not that that's really a thing, because there's all sorts of people, but whatever. I'll get into that another stream, whether there is indeed a gun community or not. But we'll say the gun community. I watch it happen all the time. A guy will come in and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much this deal, because I post lots of deals, by the way, over on my locals. If you guys want to get awesome deals, definitely go there, including a post about his new site where you'll be able to get a bunch of other deals. So go over there and we'll hook you up both different ways. But this is a common scenario I see in the comment section. Someone will say, G3C, $259 free shipping. That's an awesome price, because they just got into guns a year and a half ago and they remember them being $350.
All about perspective.
Yes, but then all the veterans come in, and I don't know why people have to be this way. Not my viewers. You guys are awesome. But people come in there and they're like, what? Screw you, noob. You're an idiot. You're getting ripped off at $259 because the G2C was $180 with a $25 rebate 3 years ago.
And you know what that was during? That was during the Trump slump. And yes, prices were that low.
Yes, prices were that low. It was a perfect storm. Taurus had just reintroduced their lifetime warranty. They had kind of had a bad reputation for semi-autos, not too much before that. And Taurus was willing to basically, for many reasons, including the economy, plus they were rebranding themselves. They had just gotten a brand new CEO, all this stuff. They were basically just willing to sell this stuff at cost or a slight loss just to get their name back up in the market. And I don't think it's very mature of people just to say that, well, that's the way it was 3 years ago, so all you people are idiots for buying guns now.
Plus, people forget one fundamental thing that happened, and this is actually very true and something that people often glaze over when they talk about that time period. A lot of people thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. Okay, yes. A lot of people thought that.
Yes.
And when Obama had won previously, what we saw was something akin to what we saw back during the COVID thing, when it wasn't as bad, but everybody flocked to gun stores because they were afraid of, and he took in 2008, it was all of Congress and plus presidency. So people were sure that legislation was coming. Again, we saw a panic post Sandy Hook it was either right after or right before his second term started.
Real bad one.
And there was another really bad one. And the gun stores learned one thing, is that when Obama wins, or an anti-gun platform president, and I won't even say Democrat, but an anti-gun candidate wins, people flock to the gun stores and they buy anything and everything they can get. Now, everybody going into the election in 2016 thought Clinton was going to win. What did they do? They pumped up the supply chain. So everybody was stocking up on ARs. I was too. Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to be the one guy caught without inventory if that were to happen. And everybody thought it was going to happen. And so when President Trump wins, demand bottoms out by a third, and there is a tremendous amount of supply in the supply chain. It was the worst thing that could happen from a retail standpoint. But the consumers got the benefit of that because everybody was dumping everything they could. It was either sell inventory or start selling assets and property and laying people off. So that was the choice. Yep. We saw like 4 distributors go out of business, tons and tons of retailers go out of business. So that's why the prices were so low, is because people were trying to dump inventory, oftentimes under cost.
Yes, and also just generally the economy was a lot better during that time. Look at the gas pump. Look at a pound of ground beef or bacon. So that's a contributing factor too.
Right.
And JDV3, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Yes, that's actually on my little list. I have like 4 bullet points. He says, do you think it would be smart to buy imports now? And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So hang out, because that's definitely an awesome question, because I have the same question myself. Real quick, one more I wanted to grab here. Gary Wisner, thanks for being a longtime channel supporter, man. How you doing? He says, I know the price of guns and everything is up and not coming down soon, so I just look at it like this. If it's a gun I've been wanting and I can buy it, yeah, here's where I'm looking at, guys. I see so many people, and it's tough decisions. I get it. Sometimes it's a tough decision because you have to talk your wife into being cool with another one. I think I saw Denny's plant-based journey a minute ago saying, well, I just need to talk the wife into let me buy another safe. So there's all of that. But I see a lot of people just sitting on the fence right now. And they're saying, well, I remember 2A EDU. You said you bought your first gun in 1994, and it was an SKS, and it was $99. I'm like, yep. Well, I really want an SKS, but they're $399 right now. So I'm just going to sit back and bide my time until they're back down to $99 again. And I'm like, no, because they could be $599 or $699 if you just keep waiting.
Didn't somebody just come out with SKSs for $399?
Yes, and I posted that on my locals.
Okay, so I will actually say, as somebody who watches the market, I've been seeing, I believe Norinco with bayonets and all that, right? They're Chinese with the bayonets on them.
Yeah, with the blade bayonets. They're imports that had gone through probably like Albania or one of those type of countries in an intermediary.
And you said they're $399?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, okay. So even a year to a year and a half ago, I was seeing Norinco AKs like that top off at like $800. So that's actually a
SKS, as you meant to say, right?
Not what did I just say?
You said AK.
Yeah. No, not AKs. SKSs, I'm sorry. I saw those at $800 easily on Gunbroker and other places just a year ago. So somebody actually told me about that deal, and I was like, wow, that is super cheap. They must have just found a massive supply of them to get them down that low. But that's probably as cheap as you're going to find them. And when those are all gone, the prices will be going back up. And I don't know who has them. And I'm not endorsing whoever's selling them. But just from a pricing standpoint, that's going to be about as low as you're going to get on one.
Right. And I think this is a good segue to come raw feeding. I'm going to read his question, but this brings up another topic. He says, when shopping for uppers, what's the difference between carbine length and mid length? Are they both considered rifle length? So the quick answer is no, no, and no. There's 3 separate things. Well, really 4. There could be a pistol length, there could be a carbine length, a mid length, and then a rifle length. So they're all 3 different. Here's my real quick answer to that. The AR was designed by Stoner to be fired out of a 20-inch barrel. There's still going to be a whole group of people, and they're not wrong. Look, there's more than one right answer here that would say that's what it should be fired out of. Rifle length, it should be a 20-inch barrel rifle. Now, we go down to the carbine, and there's been different versions of this where they would just cut down original M16s and make commandos. Dissipators had problems because those wouldn't run good on that rifle length gas with such a short barrel. Dwell time, all these different things with the bullet. But you probably want a simple answer than that. So they came out with other different gas systems in the meantime. So here's my real quick suggestion. If you have something with a 16-inch barrel, you could either appropriately put a mid-length or a carbine length. I'm going to choose mid-length every time for myself. It seems to be a smoother impulse, more pleasant to shoot, beats up the gun a little less. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm usually between. I personally like either carbine or rifle. I tend to avoid mid-length, not just. I mean, the impulse, the recoil impulse. I agree with you is really good, but it's like handguard availability and stuff. I have a harder time finding mid-length stuff available than I do carbine and rifle length, just because there's not as much of it out there. That's just my personal
I wasn't
opinion.
aware that there was rifle length on shorter barreled guns, but okay.
Oh, on a shorter barrel gun?
Well, I don't know what he's talking about actually. So let me back up.
I thought you meant rifle length on either a 20-inch barrel or it's a dissipator.
Yes. So yes, to clarify, because he didn't specify that. Yeah. Okay. So if it's a 20-inch, I'm going to want a rifle length gas system.
Right.
If it's a 16-inch, and yeah, I just kind of put that in my head. 99% of what I'm seeing people buy are 16-inch ARs.
Yeah.
Probably 100 of those for every 20 inch.
100%. Either 16 or 20, and occasionally you see an 18, but it's usually 16 inches.
So let me tell you what was going on in my head. Look, I know you thought it was a thorough question. We need way more info to truly answer that. It's more complicated than you might think. So let's assume, hypothetically, Chris, it's a 16-inch barrel.
Yes.
Are you thinking carbine length? It's easier to find the accessories or the mid-length?
On a 16-inch barrel, I'm going to go carbine length. That's what I would prefer, yes.
Okay, and that's where there's no right or wrong answer here, because we're both into this stuff. I'm going to go mid-length every day, all day long. He's going carbine. We both have separate reasons. Neither of us are wrong. So now you're more confused than when you started, right? I don't know.
I think surely for recoil impulse, I would go mid-length, but for parts availability, aftermarket stuff, plus I'm kind of a purist. Yep. And so I either stick with carbine length furniture, a carbine length gas system, or a rifle length on a 20-inch barrel.
Here's my real answer, though. None of them. Just buy an AK. You'll be good.
I agree with that. I'm a fan of ARs too, but every single AR-15 I own is a 20-inch barrel rifle length, I think, currently.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of an AK guy, but
me too.
I love the ARs, guys. Marco Polo, thanks for the super chat, man. And he says, I'm a newbie, not ashamed. Awesome, dude. He says, I have 4 Taurus pistols. I did not get to experience the prices of the past, but I'm okay. G3X and AR pistols are next. Well, nice, man. And that's actually right. What I was getting at is this. So here's another factor to consider, guys. And I do not want this to be panic buying, because here's the thing. It's panic buying if I come on here and say, guys, the ATF just announced this. You have until tomorrow. So this is encouragement. But look, this thing's not going away with the ATF redefining what is a firearm, what is a receiver, what can you build at home. I can't help but to think that they're going to be changing something. Now, they might have delayed it a little bit, as reported, but coming up here in the next few months, they're going to come out with that final rule. Now, if all of a sudden they say an AR upper is now its own firearm, or a slide of a pistol is its own firearm, that's going to drastically change from where we're at right now with the prices of these, because 2 things is going to happen. First of all, there's tons of extra paperwork with FFL items. There's also, for an assembled firearm, I believe it's a 15% excise tax that the government slaps on there. Also, people are going to, like I said, they're going to panic buy. And then just prices. I could see prices on like ARs and Glock kits and all the stuff that people like to build at home. I could see that skyrocketing when this new ATF rule comes out. Have you thought of that?
That's not legislation has effects on the market, both when it's impending and both when it passes. So, I mean, you kind of get it coming and going.
Well, this isn't legislation. This is just fiat ATF.
Yeah,
creating laws out of thin air.
Is it anything that they've actually put into practice, or is this something that's going up for comment? This isn't something I know a whole lot about.
No, I've talked about this a lot on here. No, it's already, the public comments already been done with a few months ago. They are going to put it through. We're just going to find out to what extent, because the proposed rule, they call it the ghost gun. Mm-hmm. The ghost gun ban is what they're marketing as. It basically says that they can make any part of a firearm that's visual exterior. So any part that you can see from the exterior could be at their discretion become a firearm in and of itself. So by the plain language of their proposed rule, that's already passed public comment, a Glock extractor could now become a firearm. The slide could become a firearm. The barrel could become a firearm. So where I'm at with it is I don't think that maybe during this first iteration, they might not necessarily make the extractor a firearm, but I could see them making AR uppers into their own firearms and slides into their own firearms. I think that's mainly what they're going to go after.
I think if they do, they will. I think the first thing that's going to happen is manufacturers of these components are going to sue them. I mean, to the end of oblivion. Whether or not stays will be put in place, I don't know. And then, it'll go possibly to the Supreme Court, and the ATF will have to demonstrate how a slide is a firearm. And if they can demonstrate that, and it becomes, part of, legal interpretation of what a firearm is, then is when I think it'll become kind of damning to things. But things, I don't know. I would have to give that some thought and mull it over. Of course, it's not good, but I think it would be contested heavily.
Okay, and just like the bump stock was contested heavily and the ATF's never been able to even offer a smidgen of evidence, it's a machine gun, but we lost in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and it went through. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a good point, but there also wasn't nearly as much money or backing on the bump stock as there would be a pistol slide. I
agree with you.
The companies, you're talking Glock, Springfield, every single manufacturer, all of their attorneys and all their money, and the entire gun community who at large would care a lot more about their slide than a bump stock. And I'm not saying I don't care about bump stocks, but there would be way more money and resources behind a fight against, making the slide a registered part, I think.
It's against people trying to build their own is basically what it comes down to. Because if you've noticed, Glock and all these companies, they've been serializing their slides and barrels forever anyway.
Yeah, but they would have to register them as firearms, right? I mean, getting those firearms, selling their parts and stuff, that would be 4473s. Gun stores would start charging transfers. It would make it harder for their customers to buy their products. And so I don't think that would be beneficial for Glock. I don't know. Again, that's something I would have to mull over.
Unless it snuffs out P80, which I think is outselling OEM Glock 10-1 right now. So they might, with Glock, it could get interesting just because
that's an interesting thing to discuss. I'm
pretty sure
I would have to give that some more thought.
And I might be wrong on this, but if you get rid of the blue label sales, which is like Leo and military, which they sell those at like very slim profit margins anyways. And this is just my take on it. Glock sells those cheap because most civilians like to buy what the militaries and the cops use. So they sell them to them for cheap to keep their production up, and then people all flock to it. But I think besides like their government and Leo sales, I think actually probably P80 is crushing OEM Glock in the civilian market, just from what I'm noticing lately.
And you would have to as well, somebody who has a unregistered Glock slide or something like that, and they are arrested and they go to court too and try to appeal the decision. You saw that. What did we see that happen with?
Well, we saw that happen with AR. We saw that happen with AR lower receivers. Felons were caught with lower receivers. They were able to successfully argue and win in court and say, actually, an AR lower receiver doesn't meet the definition of a firearm at all. And what you're talking about is exactly what brought on this new ATF rule. Because according to the National Firearms Act, if you look in the GCA as amended, a lower receiver of an AR actually doesn't meet the legal definition.
I've heard all of that too.
So
I think a case to try and make a pistol slide, docking people for having unregistered pistol slides or extractors, I think would be a much harder case for the ATF.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's something I would have to.
It's in the proposed rule. I'll just tell you guys this. It's in the proposed rule. It did pass public comment, and we'll see what they're going to do. So I guess I have the opinion that that's going to make a panic buy. You're thinking probably not as much, maybe.
No, of course, anything that actually starts going into effect and in practice. We haven't seen it in practice yet, right? I mean, they're not raiding people and trying to confiscate unregistered slides and extractors or anything like. When that starts happening, then yes.
And when YouTubers come on and say, hey guys, this just went into effect,
right,
you're not going to be able to buy these anymore starting in 30 days, that in and of itself can start a panic buy.
Yeah, of course, but I've yet to see any of that. And so I don't know. Yes, if that all starts happening and the ATF actually starts going out and acting on these things and confiscating people's slides and arresting people for having an extractor, then yeah, that's when I think things will go sideways for sure.
Yeah. Raw feeding. Thanks so much for another super chat, dude. You didn't need to pay to ask again. I would have tried to catch it for you, but thank you. He says, basically, I'm wondering if either of those lengths, 16-inch, would be considered a pistol. Okay, so that's different than the gas system. He said, I just want to deal with the can shoulder, can't shoulder.
Yeah.
They go
So
back and forth.
16 inches is the minimum length requirement for a rifle before it's considered an SBR if it has a shoulder stock on it. Again, consult an attorney. I'm not an attorney. But if your rifle has a barrel length of 16 inches or more, it can have a shoulder stock on it and be shoulder. It's not considered a pistol.
But with the other new ATF proposed ruling that's also going concurrently but separately with the redefinition of firearms, ATF is now asserting that sometime in the near future they are going to determine if it has a brace on it. They're going to basically consider it a stock. They're going to have a point system.
Now that I have heard a lot about, and there has been a lot looming on that for like the past 2 years. At least there's been talk of them trying to
come and gone, and now it's back again.
Come and gone, now it's back. It went away, it's back again. So
and it passed public comment. So this time it is supposedly coming. At least what we know right now.
That's something I expected would come along at some point. I mean, it just seems like low-hanging fruit. And so I've always kind of had my guard up with that. And so I expect, yes, if this isn't the time that they do it, they will eventually do it. I think the writing's on the wall for braces.
So I did an hour-long stream on locals a couple months ago, so I'll be short. Here's the way it works. Contact a lawyer. This is just for your entertainment. State laws may vary, guys. Here's how this works, though. According to the ATF, the AFT, the way they interpret the GCA and the NFA, and like lately 3/4 of their interpretations are wrong, in my opinion. I want to say that too. But here's how it works. If it starts off life as a pistol, it can later on be turned into a rifle. But once it's a rifle, it can never be a pistol. It could be a short-barreled rifle, but it could never be a pistol. So here's the easy way to look at this. If you have an AR pistol with a brace on it and a short barrel on it, okay, if you were to put a stock on it, it would become a short-barreled rifle. Or if the AFT determines by fiat law, but keep in mind, they have arrest powers, they can ruin your life, whether you believe it's unconstitutional or not, and it is unconstitutional, they're making laws out of thin air. That's what they kind of do lately. So with that said, if they determine that a brace now becomes a stock and they determine it's a SBR, okay, so here's what you could do. I'm not saying you should do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't care. I could care less. I'm not in law enforcement, but if you wanted to be like completely by the book, you could take that 7.5-inch AR upper off of your braced pistol, slap a 16-inch upper on it. Now, who cares if a brace is considered a pistol or not? Just shoulder it. Or I'm sorry, a brace is considered a stock or not. Just shoulder it. Or you could just put a real stock on it at that point. Because you can, and I don't know if there's any states that have different things to say, but you can federally turn a pistol into a rifle as long as it meets two criteria: 16-inch barrel or longer and 26 inches overall length or longer. So there you go. You could turn your pistol into a rifle later if you felt you needed to comply with any new regulations. Right? But I'm not necessarily encouraging anyone to comply or not to comply. It's just the whole thing's a mess. And there's a lot of people worried right now because let's face it, some of these pistols that are out, which meet the definition of pistol, the brace has been in common use for a long time. So some of these become nothing more than just like novelties and not even hardly range toys. Like, could you imagine like an AK pistol and just like holding it out in front of you? A lot of these guns are going to suck at the range. So there's tons of people worried about that now.
That's how the market used to be on those things until the braces started coming out. See, the brace, I remember the first brace really started gaining traction, around like 2011, 2010? Is that about right?
In that area, I would say at 10, 11, 12.
But there were like pistol configuration AR-15s going back to the 90s. So people were doing it for decades. Now, I think braces are an excellent thing that came along. And they're just, I'm not going to call it a workaround or a loophole. It's not. But I definitely love braces. I enjoy them myself. I think they make things a lot more usable, and which was their intended purpose, for
Yep.
people who might be disabled or anything like that, or for people who aren't disabled. And you kind of have this feeling of you want people with firearms to have more control over them than less control over them. I would think, but I do worry about braces, like the whole bump stock issue.
Yep. Yep. No, look, guys, people always like to conflate things. I don't know if this comments to me, but it's just not true. It is a mess, and I'll stand by that, and I'll say it 10 times. It's a mess right now. And anyone that's, I guess, unless you're extremely new here, you haven't been listening very well to what I say. I say literally all gun control is unconstitutional. Every bit of it, 100%, because the words shall not be infringed, in my opinion, only mean one thing. However, there's people with guns and there's people with badges, and they do crazy things to people. And when a viewer asks me, what can I do to comply with this law? I'm going to say I don't give legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. But I'm not going to make a very personal decision for someone and say, hey, it's time for you to stand up and be the Paul Revere and take them down and make it your last stand. When the people in comments, they're not going to have your back. They're just running your suck. So these people in the comments aren't going to do anything to help you. So while I believe that it's all 100% unconstitutional, if somebody asks me, I'm going to tell them the truth. You can take a pistol and you can turn it into a rifle. And that is actually what the law says. Regardless if I believe that the laws are constitutional or not, it is what it is. And that's the way it makes it work, right? So basically we're looking at like, okay, are they going to ban this or ban that? Well, we do have right now, as we speak, not that the Republicans are much better, but we do have it where we have a trifecta again right now. We have the former vice president in office. We have the House controlled by the Democrats. And then we have the Senate, which is a tie, but it's effectively controlled by the Democrats because they have the tiebreaker with the former vice president's, whatever she is, the former junior senator from California, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't see there being any kind of slump as far as like, the Trump slump. If you elect me, your 8-year assault on the Second Amendment's over. There's nobody saying that right now in leadership, is there?
No, there's not. I'm curious to see what happens when we get back to the presidential elections in 2.5 years, to see who's going to run and what the platforms are going to be run on. As I mentioned, I've noticed sort of the anti-gun rhetoric, at least from mainstream media and politicians, has really calmed down since all the rioting and everything that happened last year, which is a positive thing. Is it gone or an issue we don't have to worry about anymore? No. It's always something we have to worry about, but at least I've just felt that that's sort of calmed down a little bit, at least in terms of that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, but going back to where, in my opinion, right now is a great time to buy a gun. If you have the money, make sure your family's well fed and housed first, like I always say. But look,
Yeah, go ahead.
Trump came in, and I'm just going to be blunt about it, guys. There was many things better, okay, than this former vice president, but he lied straight to all of our faces. But it was a lie people believed. When he said your 8-year assault on the Second Amendment's over, he did exactly the same amount of things that he could, executive order-wise, to infringe as Obama did. Like on paper, you can add it up. They both did the same.
Yeah, I actually say Trump did more kind of harm to the Second Amendment than in 4 years than Obama did in 8, which was a huge disappointment to me. Not at all what I expected.
He did more for the overall picture, yeah, but I can just point to like 2 things real easy. He just said, bump stocks, get them gone. I don't want them, which then allowed the AFT to now like gain so much more power that now they're going for more and more and more.
That was the danger in what happened, was how it was done. The whole, how do you interpret bump stocks into oblivion with the machine gun bans and all that? That's how it was done. And I said it, many times when it happened. I said the problem here isn't necessarily that bump stocks are gone, although I didn't want bump stocks gone. The problem here is how they did it, because it's leaving the door wide open for even more important things. And I think they're going to lump. That's how they're going to go after braces, is they're going to lump them into the SBR laws, which is exactly what they're doing. And
lumping certain triggers in as machine guns now.
Right. They're doing with the, oh gosh, what's the name of that? what's that trigger that they're doing that with?
There's a couple of them. There's the WOT and the FRT.
FRT, that's the one.
There's a lot going on with that too. So
with a quick reset, and they're trying to lump that in the exact same way with machine guns. So it's how do we take existing laws, which are usually always very vague in terms of how they're written, so they're open for interpretation. Well, they're vague in some ways and they're very specific in others.
Yeah.
But how can they use the vague aspects of these laws to put other things into them, to say we're interpreting it to fit into an existing law? They're not necessarily creating new laws. You're saying, how can we lump this into an already a law already on the books, therefore making it illegal? Which
That's
is
what they're saying.
Which is exactly what happened with bump stocks.
But when the law is crystal clear on how it works, and then they have a definition that's so far outside of the law, they can say they're interpreting law they want. But in practical matter, they're creating new laws from the executive branch. Is how it, in my opinion, how it basically works in the end. Because you look at how a bump stock works. You look at all these different things, even what braces were designed and intended for. It doesn't meet the definition of any of these things in the laws Congress passed, but the ATF. So Trump started that slippery slope. Now let's look at the AK world. Somebody talked about imports. We can go there right now.
Yeah.
So imports have been banned by a number of presidents, Republicans and Democrats alike. So look at the Russian AKs. That's where Kalashnikov obviously founded the AK. So in many people's opinion, that was like the holy grail to have, something made from Russia. It's their firearm. Okay, we had two choices. We had Kalashnikov concern with the Sega rifles, and then we had Molot with the Veprs. Well, Obama banned all the Segas, and then Trump came in and banned all the Veprs. So those are gone now.
That's right.
And if you go back to 1989, which you alluded to, that's where we get the Section 922R, and it can have no more than 10 foreign parts. That was not to be confused with the assault weapons ban, but that was the assault rifle imported ban. Now, it only applied to rifles, not pistols. That's why you can get pistols completely foreign parts. But rifles, they either have to come in nowadays as a sporter, hunting version, and then made cool here in the U.S., or they have to be cut up in little pieces, rendered no longer a firearm, brought in as a kit, reassembled here. So this started in 89, right? Really?
Right. So the fundamental question becomes, right now we are enjoying imports from Czech Republic, from Yugoslavia, from Poland,
Romania.
And is there going to be an end to that eventually? I think, yeah. I mean, we've been going down that road, like you said, since 1989. I think at some point they've already sort of played with the idea of preventing imports from coming into the country. Now, I will say that there is one caveat to that, and that is a lot of the foreign manufacturers, and I think this is mainly to get down their importation costs, have created domestic manufacturing. So like Glock and CZ and FN have domestic manufacturing outlets, and could they move that production here stateside and avoid that ban? Maybe. I know with like Arsenal, they bring in a lot of their parts from Bulgaria. If you're shipping parts that are not complete, would that be okay? Maybe the receiver has to be made here since that's the registered part. I don't know. There's typically, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always people coming up with new ways to skirt around legislation. But could there be a massive squeeze on imported firearms in the future? Yeah. And I don't think there's any reason to suspect there wouldn't be, at least eventually. So now could be a great time. And we're kind of in the heyday of really cool imports coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little bit pricey, but at least they're obtainable.
Yeah. And I would note it depends how they're banned too, though. So the 89 was a general thing, but it wasn't a sanction on a specific country or company. So let's look at it this way, though. The sanctions for the Russian AK stuff, they haven't found a workaround yet. So basically, you cannot bring in a full Molot Vepr rifle or shotgun. You can't bring in a magazine. You can't bring in a floor plate from one. In fact, if, let's just say hypothetically, Vepr also made pencil erasers, you can't even bring in a pencil eraser from Molot either.
Right. The company was sanctioned. Right.
Yeah. So there's always that thing too, where it's like, let's just say hypothetically, I don't see this happening. I don't know exactly what goes on globally with us and Romania's relationship. But let's just say the Cougar factory, CUGIR, however you guys want to pronounce it, the Cougar factory, that company got sanctioned and all of its executives by name. We wouldn't even be able to get their pencil eraser if they made that. So here's what I always say with imports. If you want one and you can afford it, buy it, because they're way easier to get shut off than just banning a certain classification here stateside, right?
They are, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's been demonstrated time and time again. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it can usually be done just with a stroke of a pen. Like, look at the Russian ammo, guys. That was signed. It happened. Now, there's still Form 6s that haven't expired yet, but he was able to just literally, with the stroke of a pen, ban the importation of the Russian ammo that we had.
Now, there's always going to be somebody there to fill the void in demand. So if Cougar is one of the biggest suppliers of, AKs on the U.S. consumer market today, and actually lately they've been really hard to find, and they, go extinct because, no longer can we have the Wasser family of AKs. Other companies will emerge to fill the void if there's a demand that's no longer being satisfied because of the loss of that manufacturer. But to say I have a genuine Cougar Romanian AK, that's not going to be what it is. It may come from another country. It may come here domestically. But that exact AK pattern, just like the Norinco, Type 56 series of rifles, just become no more. And then on the used market. So if you're looking, okay, I want a general AK that's really good quality. Will there always be a way, as long as AKs are allowed to be owned in this country, will there always be a way for them to be manufactured or brought into the country somehow? Sure. But if you're a collector and you want a Romanian AKM in your collection, this, may be one of the last decades that we can buy. The 2020s may be the golden era of being able to buy all those imports. You don't know what's coming, but you can use the past to sort of formulate the likelihood of what might come. And again, these things have happened. They're not hypothetical. They have happened with Molot, with Vepr, with Sega, with Norinco. So, yeah.
And here's what I've noticed. There's one pattern, though. It just seems like every few years they ban another one, but they never go back in time and say, well, now we'll lift this one. They never lift. I mean, they can in theory, but here's the problem. Okay, fine. Your 8-year attack on the Second Amendment's over. Himself ran for office. He could have, with that same stroke of a pen that Clinton used to ban all the Norinco stuff, he could have unsigned that in 5 minutes. He could have also unsigned Obama's ban on Kalashnikov concern. He didn't do it. He wouldn't do it. This is just in the past, guys. Again, hopefully we can cross our fingers. But in my opinion, I don't care whoever gets elected or otherwise put in office. I don't see anybody ever unsigning anything. Have you noticed that with imports?
They won't, because it becomes a political club for their political opponents to beat them with, and that's why they don't do it. I mean, pure and simple.
Yep.
They start, their opponents will start running ad campaigns about how, this presidential candidate, turned on the faucet on AK-47s coming into the country, and they're the ones who do. So it's not a lot that they can gain from opening it. Because everybody expects they won't, but there's a lot that they can lose by opening it politically, and that's why they don't do it.
Because none of these guys run for office to truly defend the Second Amendment. They run for office to try to get elected. And
I mean, that's pure.
We all know that.
I mean, it's a job, and everybody who is in any type of field, they want to get hired, and so that's going to be their number one priority. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah, exactly, man. Thanks for the super chat, Reptile guys, and a channel member. He says, trying it for the 3rd time. Hopefully you'll get this one. You're awesome, man. Glad to be part of this community. Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man. And he might have been saying that to you, but both of us, I don't know. I'm assuming he was saying it to you, actually.
No.
But here's how I look at it, too. Yes, people will fill the void, but the more they keep banning these imports, it's like you said earlier, yeah, that trough will come down, but it's still higher than the next trough. So I can't help but to think that if they were still bringing in Norinco AKs right now, that Romania and Poland and all these, they might have to lower their prices just a little bit because the Chinese ones were so cheap. So as soon as like the cheapest one gets banned,
or they wouldn't have come into the market at all.
They all bump. Yeah, they might not have ever even came into the market because they didn't need to. Or that they knew they couldn't even compete.
They couldn't compete if they did.
Yeah.
It's just like Palmetto is talking about producing 7.62 by 39 ammunition, right?
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have done that if the importation, the ban on cheap imports wasn't going into effect. Because if they put all that time and capital into producing that ammunition, they could never get it as cheap as the imported stuff. They wouldn't be able to compete. Or they would have done it sooner. So they're doing it now because the opportunity's there. And that could be why a lot of other AKs flooded the market post 94 ban, or even during the 90s, like the Romanian stuff started coming in the 90s, was because the opportunity was there for them to come in. There was tremendous amount of demand and there was no competition because of, they couldn't come into the country, the Chinese stuff at least.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. So basically, if you think about it, though, so right now I have a Polish Baril 5.56 here, and they also have a 7.62x39 version that has come in a couple times. If you guys want to know something a little more specific, that's one that I would look at that like comes in a couple hundred at a time, and then there's like a lull of a year, and then maybe 150 more come in. What's your opinion?
What are those retailing at right now?
They were about 1,500 even.
And so right in line with like an Arsenal CM7.
Yes, but previously, though, before that, there was a small number of what they call the Polish Archer that was brought in by IO Imports. The gun was the biggest dud ever. And many people still hate this today, but people have always hated the 5.56 AK in the US in the past. So people hated the 5.56 AK because they were so purist, not realizing that actually the 5.56 AK is one of the most purest guns there is, because ever since the Warsaw Pact was dissolved, Poland's been using the 5.56. So it's a real correct caliber for that gun. The ironic part is when it's chambered in 7.62x39, except for a real small little contract they have. I can't remember the country now. It's a small country. Actually, the 7.62x39, if you're looking in the Baril pattern, is less purist than getting a 5.56 Baril, right? So that was a flop for IO Inc. They stopped bringing them in. Nobody wanted them. They couldn't give them away. But then after they sold the few hundred that were brought in, those were going for $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000.
Oh, they're going crazy right now. Everybody wants what they can't have, though. But yeah.
Yes. So, but that's the thing, though, and I want to give you guys encouragement. If you have the money, look, there's the Zastava M90, there's the M70s. They've been slower lately, but they're still the Romanians. So hindsight's always 2020. What people that are newer into guns might not realize is people used to shun and not want those old Chinese pre-bans back before the ban too, and they were super, super cheap. And now that people can't get them, they like want them like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we may have pre-bans that you can get right now. You just don't know it yet, because in the future, people might be like, oh my gosh. So if you bought a Baril last year, you could be 18 years old and just bought one this year. You're a young person. You could be 40 years old, and then the future generation of young bucks are going to be calling you a boomer because you have one of these, by then with inflation, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 rifles sitting there 20 years from now. It could happen.
In the gun market, especially, but this is true in other items as well. You have two types of buyers. You have the utilitarian buyer, the buyer that's interested in the item for its utilitarian nature, and you have the collector. When the gun is available, the collector is not interested, and so that entire segment of the market doesn't exist there. It's generally why I guess the prices are lower, not only because there's so much supply for it, but there's a segment of the market that's just purely not interested. They're spending their money in collectibles. Once they stop making it, the entire collector side of the market gets interested all of a sudden. So not only is the supply tapped off, but a whole new group of buyers want it. And that's why that stuff just explodes when they stop making it. And the thing with imports, I think what we're kind of driving at is we never know when the last day is. When 1989 came, all those people who had AKs in 1987 and 1988, they had no idea that was coming. They could have gone and bought 100 of them, and today they would be worth tremendously more than what they paid for them. And I guess that's the whole point, especially with guns, is you just never know. You just never know when that's going to be. And if you're a collector or you're a utilitarian owner, if you want one for its utilitarian purpose, today may be the cheapest it's ever going to be. And I actually think it is the cheapest it's ever going to be. I don't think they're going to get much cheaper than they are now, unless something happens with the economy or the supply chain gets way cheaper. But it's about as cheap as they're going to get.
I agree with you. And yes, thank you myself. It was Nigeria. I knew it was so look, technically they do make the beryllium pattern for Nigeria in 7.62x39. However, the vast majority always have been and probably always will be in 5.56. And I'm pointing, guys, because we're on YouTube. There is one over there within pointing distance, 5.56 Baril. Somebody else asked, are you talking about parts kits? Well, the ones I'm talking about that were brought into the country, both the previous ones that IO Inc. brought in, as well as the ones now that are brought in by Arms of America, sold at Atlantic and AOA, Those are factory built guns.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have to come over in a configuration that passes the ATF's standard of sporter rifle. So they get unsporterized here, but the nuts and bolts of it. So the receiver, the barrel, the trunnions, the bolt and carrier, that's all made over in Poland with appropriate amount of U.S. parts, back to that George Bush ban of 1989. Yep, with the Section 922R and all of that. So that's where, like I said earlier, stuff becomes a mess and it gets really, really confusing, but that's how it is. I'm trying to think of what's available right now. So I mentioned that there's a couple higher end, they're expensive right now, AKs, but it's kind of like this, to be honest with you guys. If you guys are willing to speculate and invest, per se, I'm not giving investment advice because I know YouTube has rules on that. But here's the thing. If you buy and you're looking at it as a long-term investment, a $100 milsurp, okay, and it went up to $300 in a certain period of time, you tripled your money. Now, a $1,500 purchase that tripled itself to $4,500. You made way, way, way more, but you actually invested. It's all a gamble is what I'm trying to say, right?
It's all speculation. You don't know when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen. I think prices are always going up. I mean, you look at the Wasser, let's not even go back as far as the 1990s. Let's go back to 2010, prior to the 2013 gun surge. I mean, those were brand new in the box for $399 with 2 magazines and a bayonet.
Yeah.
And here we are 10, 12 years later, and they're like $900. So they've more than
they're still coming in. So this is what I'm telling you guys. If you want,
so even if they don't stop coming in, the prices are never going down. They're just never will. And
okay,
go ahead.
Here's my opinion on imports, guys. And I'm not telling you guys whether you should like imports or not. Here's the thing with imports. And when we mean imports, I don't mean like, well, it's a Glock from Austria, therefore it's an import, maybe. But what I mean by imports is stuff that like only other countries make that we don't make here. That's what I mean by import. There's plenty of Glocks being made here now, as he's discussed earlier. But if you want an import now, buy it now, because the only way, in my opinion, you'll lose money on an import is this. If you buy it when it's coming in the country, okay, at regular retail price, you'll never lose money in my experience. So only lose money if 2 things happen. A, you get ripped off and you overbid on Gunbroker, or someone cheated or lied to you, sure. Or if you modify that firearm or Bubba it or Sporter it. If you don't do that, I promise you guys this. I do not have 1 milsurp in my collection unless I bought it very recently that's worth less now than it was before. It's literally never happened to me even once. Have you noticed that too?
Absolutely. And it doesn't even get into the investment question. It's just people want to make sure that their money that they put into stuff is guarded. And, you don't want to pay $1,000 for something and then have it end up being worth $500, well, I would say that did happen to a lot of people just a year ago. I mean, I saw people routinely spending, $1,000 on a Glock 19. And if you did that, then a year later, they're back down to $500 again, new in a lot of cases. You're going to take a massive hit on that. But that goes to what you were just saying, to make sure you're buying it right. You're not buying it under, panic conditions, and you're getting reasonably close. Markets do fluctuate, but there's a general baseline that they tend to hover around, at least at any given time, to make sure you're buying somewhat close to that. Look at 3 or 4 places before you buy, just to get an idea. One of them is not an outlier and way too high, but is generally, if you follow those rules, you won't get hurt on a imported gun purchase, and even a lot of new firearm gun purchases, unless you sell to a dealer like me. They're going to have to buy it and make money on it. But if you're selling to another private individual, you'll take a little bit of a loss for it being used. Yeah. But generally, they hold most of their value.
And it might not be because you're trying to, quote, invest. It might be because you want to buy one as a shooter. Well, if you just want to buy it as a shooter and enjoy it that way, you can care less. You're never going to sell it. Fine. Still, if you want it as a shooter, buy it now if it's coming in on the primary market, as long as you're not getting ripped off. And I will tell you guys a story, actually, how awesome of an investment a lot of milsurps are. I'll tell you guys how I got ripped off in hindsight, but now I'm doing good. But real quick, Linda 2A says, Denny says, make hay while the sun shines, buy when able. Absolutely. And Chuck R says, hold the tail. And this is basically when you're a YouTube channel member. And I really appreciate you guys. YouTube has this new feature where you can get like a free super chat like every couple months. There's a problem though, because StreamYard doesn't put those up in color. So I don't see them. So she's bringing attention to those. And thank you guys. I know you guys are all supporting the channel and I see them after the fact. There's just literally a glitch where Mike McClune's super chat here shows up in a bold color where I can see it, but something's not getting communicated between YouTube and StreamYard, and I don't see those bonus free super chats that channel members get. So I just want to let you guys know that because I always feel bad over the weekend. Mike McClune, thanks for the super chat, man, and a channel member. He says, just wanted to say hello. Busy at work tonight. We'll have to watch the rebroadcast tomorrow. We'll be listening when I can. Have a good night and see you all in locals tomorrow night. And he put the 2A EDU GX4 emoji up there. So have fun at work, dude. I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing you on locals tomorrow night. Thanks, man. So here's what happened to me. Well, it happened to me. I did it on purpose. So whatever. I already had guns by then. But I'm like, man, I was starting to see what was happening with the prices of the Chinese AKs. They had been steadily going up in price ever since they were banned in 94, right? And they went up the first time Obama got elected. Then they went up during Sandy Hook because people were panic buying. Well, there was a particular version of a Mac 90 I wanted because a lot were slant back receivers, some were square back. Mm-hmm. So let's just put it this way. A Mac 90 that was only selling for $200 and something pre-94. All right, let's fast forward to, it was still only up to about $400 pre-Obama. Had skyrocketed up to $800. I bought it during a panic time period, but I wanted the gun. So I bought it for $800, which was considered panic buying. I got ripped off. I have no regrets because now they're like $1,800.
Yeah, yep.
This is a brand new in the box one, and I still have it new in the box. So milsurps and certain things can be such a good, and I'm using investment in air quotes, not giving you guys investment advice, but they can be such a good investment that sometimes if you buy the right stuff, you can panic buy it, and then a decade later, you're actually bragging about the deal.
We say you didn't buy high, you bought early.
There you go.
Yeah, so, that stuff. Anything that is no longer manufactured, it's going to continue to go up in value. It just they do. More and more people enter the market, and more demand is oriented in that firearm. Fewer and fewer people put them out for sale because they end up deep in somebody's collection, or eventually those all make their ways to collections, and then they sit there for decades until the person passes away or something like that. So it's just inevitable to happen. Yeah, a lot of my guns will too.
I just admitted to being part of that because I said I bought it new in the box 10 years ago, and it was already 20 years old then, and it's still sitting there new in the box.
Yeah, so they just get stuck away in closets and gun safes and things like that, never to be seen again for 30, 40, 50 years, and then they come out of hiding. The same thing happened with machine guns, but that was definitely an artificially inflated market because of the ban. But it's sort of like one of those things, no new ones can be produced. It's the same with those Mac 90s and Type 56s and things like that. It's a similar concept, but the value of them will just continue to increase. That's why right now you're in a time where a lot of those imports are still available. So the tap has not been turned off. And, $1,000 for like a Yugoslavian AK or for a Romanian AK, it's still a lot of money. People work hard for their money. I totally get that. But that's a lot easier pill to swallow than when you wake up one day and a Wasser 10's $3,000, because they will be one day. I'm sure of it.
I am too. It's just when, not if.
It's just when. When will it hit that point?
Yeah. No, I agree. Marco Polo, thanks for another super chat. He says, thoughts on SHOT Show 2022? Well, I didn't go. So, not saying like I have bad thoughts on it. I just didn't go for several reasons. I don't want to fly in times like this. I don't want to be going to conventions in times like this with all the rules they have. That's part of it. Plus, I'm broke. I'm not like a big paid, wealthy, person in the gun industry. I have to fund these trips on my own. I have to budget and think about what I'm going to do. So I basically would rather go to Palmetto State Armory's The Gathering event, which is in March, and I'm definitely planning on going there. And I'd also really like to go and tentatively planning on going back to the Iraq veteran shoot in October. Can't afford all three, so that's why I didn't go.
I'm getting ready for this big launch on our stuff that I can't talk about, but that's why I didn't go either. Plus, the same thing as you, nobody's paying me to go out there, and if I'm not there, I'm not in the store, running my business and all that. So I have seen a whole bunch of content pop up on YouTube about new releases and stuff. I really want to sit down and watch all those, but this weekend has been nuts for me. So I honestly, most of you probably, actually, I'm sure all of you know way more about what's going on at SHOT Show than I do right now. I just haven't taken the time to dive into it.
Probably me too. So yes, definitely. There's not a lack of enthusiasm. Like the content all these other creators are doing there, that's awesome. I'm glad they did. So it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to see the new guns. There's just other logistical reasons, right?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see about all the stuff coming out. It's been way too long. A lot of the manufacturers were busy playing catch up with products they already make just to get them back into the market, in the past couple of years. Plus, SHOT Show last year was also canceled, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so I anticipate there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. I'm personally interested in the Hellion. I don't know when that'll be coming out from Springfield, but I like military type stuff, and that's the VHS-2 that's used by Croatia. Civilian version. So that'll be cool.
Yeah, and just for me, I'm interested in the VHS-2. I love Croatian firearms. The Hellion has no interest to me whatsoever because I fundamentally can't stand the owner, Dennis Reese, and haven't forgiven him. So that's why you'll never see it on my channel.
Hey, I totally respect that. I'm just into anything that's been used by any military. I want it. I don't know why. I'm just that way.
I too personally want it. He signed off, or not signed off, but he basically
a whole carve out in Illinois.
Yep, carved out his lobbyists carved out exceptions for them and Rock River Arms at the expense of a bunch of mom and pop gun shops and kitchen table FFLs, and it is what it is.
Yep.
If he retires or quits, look, they're not even making hardly any products themselves, guys. Their XD line, HS product, Croatia.
All Croatia. I actually talked about that with politics aside. If you want to talk about one of the most insane marketing and branding moves that has ever been done, especially in this industry, those HS-2000s were being imported into the country from Croatia, and they were sitting on gun dealer shelves for like $199. Nobody would touch them with a 10-foot pole. Like, I don't know if you guys remember seeing them at gun shows and gun shops.
I have an HS-2000 right over there in the other room.
Yeah, and of course, if you have an HS-2000, it's an old Croatia one without Springfield markings on it.
Yep.
But they took a firearm that was $200 that nobody wanted. They stuck, the Springfield branding on it. They don't even make it. They just put their branding on it. Put a whole bunch of money into advertising the new XD. A lot of people thought it was a brand new gun that didn't even exist. I mean, it'd been coming out on the market for a long time. Doubled the price to like $499, $500, whatever the first original XDs costed, and they couldn't keep them in stock. They became like the third best-selling handgun in this country. In 2006, it won Handgun of the Year. And that's insane. That's what branding and marketing can actually do.
Hired Rob Latham, the whole shooting team, all of it. No, you're right. That is crazy.
An interesting story.
But here's the thing, guys. So what he says very interesting, but this goes right back to what we were talking about. I see your chat, Bacon, but you can't even make this stuff up, guys. So check this out. Here's the funny part. $200 HS-2000. Nobody would buy. But if you wanted it with an import, you should have bought it then.
Should have bought it then. Yep.
They went up to
point proven.
They went up to 500 because of the marketing thing. And you're right. It was genius on that level. But now if you have an original HS-2000, that's actually worth like a lot. Like you barely even see them on Gunbroker. And when you do, they're worth double, triple, or even more than an XD. So isn't that kind of crazy?
Should have bought the imports.
You should have bought that original import. That's what's weird about it, guys. Even if there's something that's out there, right? And then it kind of changes forms, there's always going to be either longtime collectors or new people, because there's always that retro appeal to new people, like there's 18-year-olds right now that are just starting to listen to Elvis or the Beatles. It's no different than guns. People will always want to go back and get that original version and then just pay like a super premium.
It's funny because you make fun of the fact that HS-2000 is $200. XD comes out, which is the exact same gun with Springfield roll marking and marketing. It's $500.
Yeah.
Now, if I had the choice between paying $200 for an XD or $500 for an HS2000, I would pay the $500 for the HS2000 for that very reason. It's rare.
Yep.
It's the original form, the original roll
Yep.
markings. And to me, that's really cool as a collectible. And it's just funny how, markets are such a funny thing.
And I saw a bidding war. Like, you guys could probably type in HS2000 right now on GB, and it's like you might not even find one. They're literally that uncommon. Last time I saw one was a few months back, and it got in a bidding war and cleared like $1,300 for a pistol that wouldn't even sell for $200. Then they sold them like hotcakes for $500. But here's the problem: the fact that they didn't sell many. That's the key to what you said. They didn't bring them in large numbers. So there's very, very few actual HS product HS2000 roll marked guns out there.
Yeah, because nobody wanted them.
So here's where you guys will win. If this Polish Baril, if they keep making them and it becomes more time tested and popular, the prices will go up because now there's just more demand, probably more inflation under Let's Go Brandon, right? So for that reason. But let's just say this. Let's just say they fail and there's not enough demand and they never bring any more in again. Now they went up even more. So they're basically going to go up no matter what, is my past experience.
They will. I mean, most guns do.
And I mean this, I truly mean this in this frame, guys. I'm trying to give you guys encouragement. No, you don't have to run out tomorrow and buy whatever. Now, a Baril, that's a different story. They bring in a couple hundred at a time. You have 10 minutes to buy one, but you guys already know that. Then they sell out, so the next shipment comes in 6 months later. But other things that aren't quite that drastic, Zastava M70, M90, those seem to kind of be steadily available. I'm trying to give you guys some encouragement that you don't have to be like old, or even if you're old, like by age, you could be new into guns, and tomorrow's pre-ban or tomorrow's future collectible, there's still some stuff out there.
And the difference between speculating on this sort of stuff is versus panic is the gist of this isn't to say go out tomorrow and buy one before it's too late. The gist is to say maybe start thinking tomorrow about buying one. Now might be a good time. Get your ducks in a row, because this is something that over the next 5 to 10 years may have been that opportunity. If you're 20 now, when you're 40, you may be looking back and saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I could get an actual imported Zastava M70 for $1,000 bucks." Can you believe that? Now they're $8,000 because they haven't been coming into the country for 8 years, and now we get this, all we can get are, domestic manufactured stuff, and new gun buyers don't even remember what it was like to be able to get imported guns. And it's just all about kind of trying to, I guess the theme of this is perspective and the general timeline. And you never really know where in the timeline you are. But, like you mentioned, people who are coming into the market today have this sort of opportunity that, people who are in the market in the 90s are like, well, I wouldn't pay that. But you may be that person from the 90s, 30 years from now. That's all I'm trying to say. Hopefully I'm articulating that correctly, but it's just something to think about.
Yes, I think you are. And I think I'm trying to answer a question I get a lot, which, yeah, I think we're doing a good job explaining it. You guys let us know in the chat. There's the people out there that are like, oh, I missed the whole boat on everything and I'll never come back. We're kind of explaining to you guys, not necessarily. Then there's the other group of people out there that are like, I'm still just going to hold off before I buy that. Like I said earlier, that Turkish shotgun. It used to be 99. Now it's 150. And you're going to wait for it to come down to 99. I'm not panic buying you and telling you to buy it tomorrow. But if you're going to wait for it to come down to 99, look, I can't prove anything. It's more likely it's going to go up to 250 before it goes back down to 99. You know what I mean?
And we're kind of a product of our own demise too, because we are all actively trying to get more people on the Second Amendment roll. We're trying to get more people involved in the gun community. More people involved in the gun community means more mouths to feed. Well, you can't eat guns and ammo, but it's more buyers that need to be satisfied, and there's a limited capacity. This is actually a pretty small industry. If you look at all U.S. industries, the gun industry, the firearm and ammunition industry in this country is a very, very, very small industry. So as it starts growing very quickly, there becomes less to go around for people, and the pricing inevitably goes up. And we're always out trying to get more people in, and because of that, more guns need to be sold, and the pricing goes up.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it too.
The GD Bacon, thanks for the super chat, man. 223. Nice caliber. He says, is it bad to panic buy booze? Asking for a friend. I don't drink, but I think that's a commodity for many people just as much as anything, right?
Did alcohol prices go up during all that? I'm sure they did. Everything went up.
See, I don't know because I don't buy any of it, but
I
I have
never
no.
look at the price tag. I just,
I'm assuming
that's
the
not the
answer is
point. What's that?
I'm assuming yes.
Yeah,
Just like guns,
probably,
panic
but who
buying.
knows or even remembers if you're doing it right.
Yeah. It's not panic if you fucking drink it. Well, yeah. But no, I don't know. So I hope all of you guys get what we're saying here. I just kind of feel bad sometimes. And here's the problem. I'll do this as another Friday night if you guys want me to. Maybe if I'm in a good mood. What is the gun community? I don't know what it is, but I see people they do get into this competition where there's two rude things that go on. And I'm just Chris and I can sift through all of this because we really don't care about whatever people want to argue about. It's like, guys, just stop. Look, there's still hope out there because you'll have noobs that are now being mean to us longtime gun owners. And I've had it happen lately. I could care less, but they're literally like trying to give me heck. They're like, dude, you're this, you're that, you're this terrible person because you have guns that they're saying to themselves, I'll never be able to afford. It's like, look, dude, I bought that for nothing. I bought that gun for $300. So what if it's worth $2-3 grand now? And then you'll have those people. Then you'll have the people that do own the more expensive guns just because they've been into it longer, not because they're rich, because they were broke and that's all they could afford to buy and they got lucky, whatever you want to call it. They got lucky, they were smart. But then you'll see some other people that are like, oh, you plebes that don't own any guns, you don't even deserve to be able to ever own a pre-ban AK. So
or
I hope
talking
you
down on
die.
people, or talking down on people who are like Taurus is their jam. It's what they love, but it's like because it's not a CZ Shadow 2, it's the worst piece of whatever. I don't agree with that. I see that kind of stuff all the time, and I mean, I think everybody. What I equate that to is people putting their own motives, goals, and aspirations into other people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just how I sum that up. Is not everybody's situation is the same, and that's whether you have the money to buy really nice guns or you don't. Don't look up, don't look down on people in either regard. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just as long as people are supporting the general right to own guns. I think that's what's important. I think that's the commonality amongst everyone. But also people who have been collecting guns for a long time, like you said, getting something that was $300 now might be worth $2,000 today. If you've been collecting those guns and you have a lot of them, like for me, if I want a really nice, really expensive firearm, I don't just go to my bank account and swipe the credit card. I sell 2 or 3 of the guns I have to get the money to do it. And then that gun becomes part of my collection. In 5 years, I might sell it to get something else. And they kind of grow that way. I don't know if the same is true for you, but when I started collecting firearms, Taurus 85, I think was my very first gun. It was a Smith & Wesson SD9VE. And I ended up with a Mosin Nagant, and it kind of got to this thing where if I wanted, and I got really into collecting surplus. And if I wanted one, I had to sell another. And then, I would try and buy, as frugally as I could. And when I would sell it, I might make a little bit of money, and one turned into 2 and 2 turned into 3. And that's kind of how my collection escalated. And Mishiko did a similar video, and he said almost the exact same experience that I had. And I commented, and I thought that was funny because the longer you're doing it, the more your hobby sort of builds itself.
Yes. So here's the thing. Here's encouragement. Look, if you guys have been in the guns longer than me, and a lot of you have, no doubt. I read the comments. Some of you guys know way more about guns than I'll ever know. Look, try to ignore the newer gun owners that are berating you. Now, at the same time, though, you got to do your part. Don't be berating the newbie that's coming in there saying, well, I want to buy my first milsurp and I only have $250. Okay, they're going to be stuck with one of those beat up from Africa Carcanos. But hey, that's maybe where they're starting from. And as much as we might rip on it now, that $240, $50 beat up Carcano from Africa, I could see a time where that could be the next $1,000 rifle.
It will. It will. Undoubtedly, it will.
So it's strange how stuff happens.
The funny thing that I talk about with military surplus is the Mosin Nagant. So the Mosin Nagant, a lot of people remember a time when they were $60 and then $80 and then $100, then $100. Now they're about $300 for just a standard round receiver Mosin. if you look at that congruently with other milsurps like Arasakas and infields, I remember around the time the Mosin Nagant was like $80, infields were about 300 for a good one.
Yeah.
People had no problem paying 300 for an infield, but you know, Mosin Nagant was always an $80 rifle. Now that a Mosin Nagant's $80, to a lot of people, it's like, oh, I can never pay 300 because I remember them being 80.
Yes.
But you were willing to pay 300 for an infield, and you know, yeah, they're different rifles, but they're collectibles at the end of the day. With actually, Mosins have cheaper ammunition if you're a shooter, so they're more usable in that regard too. But you know, we will be 5 years from now, 6 years from now, a basic Mosin Nagant will hit $600. Infields will top 1,000. It's going to happen. It's if it didn't happen, it would be breaking the rule. So it will. So there's no time to buy like today. They're not going to go down. They're not going to be 150 again, unless you find a really good deal. But if you're talking generally across the market, they're not going to. So I guess that's another theme of the video.
Yeah, and I know you kind of had a couple in your showcase. I showed a teaser on locals when I was there, right? So I ended up getting my Daewoo pistol, which I showed you guys a teaser of from his shop, Marksman Shooting Sports. But you had a couple other ones, and it just reminded me, this was only like a year ago, and maybe you still can here and there. I think Atlantic's getting them in still. So you could get like a CZ Visor 70 or 50, almost the same gun, slight nuance changes, guys. You might look at those right now and be like, well, this is kind of a no nothing, whatever. Hold on. First of all, it's CZ, which has a big name. I don't know when, but that is going to become a $500, $600, $700 pistol, because there was a time you could.
It's a direct copy of the PPK PP design too.
Exactly.
Because
you could get Walther P38s for $250 or whatever those CZs are going for. You could get those back then too. It's just when you buy them. So there's still some stuff out there. Like
and you're right. The CZ70 is totally an undiscovered gem. That's one of those that when people catch on to them, I think you're right. They're going to go, because they're a really well-made gun, and they are, you know, the Czech military police surplus pistol. That's really good quality. Yeah, it's a 32 automatic. A lot of people kind of
pleasure to shoot, but
that is one of those rare surplus guns that's still super cheap that not a lot of people know about. And the Star BMs were that way for a while too, but I'm starting to see those go up.
They are. And just since I've been doing this channel, I was telling you guys, look, they've got the Star BMs for $159. Go for it right now. And if you would have bought one of those just a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you'd be doing okay.
I did a like surplus pistols to buy video, or maybe it was surplus guns in 2018.
Yeah.
I had the VZ70 and the Star BM, I think the Makarov, and I had all those. And at that time, Bulgarian Makarovs were $299. I was selling them in my store. This was just in 2018, 2019. Bulgarian Makarovs with 2 magazines, holster, and field manual. Not field manual, but the book. The
logbook.
The logbook. Thank you. $299. And now just the gun in okay condition with 1 mag, $500 easily. So they've almost doubled in just 2 years. And so at the same, this VZ70 is lagging a little bit, but I think it will too.
And that's even gone up too. So here's what I've done, guys. And some of you are going to be like, yep, I get it. Otherwise, guys, whatever. But trust me, here's what I'm telling you guys. Don't get jealous of what I'm about to say. There's still stuff right now. You can start now and still have these same stories 10 years from now. So Mosins, $60, $70 people had told me about. That was a little before my time. I remember them being 80, then 99, and then I just kind of felt it. And this was back around like 10 years ago. They were starting to creep up to 139, but then out of the blue, Classic had a sale back down to 99. I said, I'm going to do it. And I literally ordered in, as my wife, she's here. I literally bought like 24 of them, 24 of them. And I don't regret that at all. That was like totally awesome. So, and then the VZ70s and VZ50s, again, almost the same pistol. Those first came in the country. So they're up to 200 and something now. But when they came in the country, like just a couple of years back, they were about $150. So what did I do? And unfortunately, Susan Wiki's here, but not that far. There's a cardboard box that literally, like, I oiled them all up real good. There's about 10 of those sitting there. And I got those for $150. So I'm just telling you guys stuff that I've done 10 years ago, stuff I did 2 years ago, and there's still stuff today.
And even the VZ70s, even today at $250, are a steal for what they are. And
that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Yeah.
And there's so much room for them to go up, and they will. And it's not about, buy them all now so you can sell them high later. It's just about, if you want one, get it now so you're not paying as much as you will in the future.
Yeah, but you might be wanting to do both. You might want to keep one or two to suit yourself. Your kid might want to go to college.
And like we talked about with having guns in your collection that you can leverage to get other guns in the future. That's also, the more you have in your collection that's going up in value, the more leverage you have for trading into something cool down the road that may not even exist yet.
Yep. So you could go to a place like I said, in Indiana, Marksman's Place, and you could say, well, look, dude, I kind of want that CZ70. Say it was new to me. And I just have a couple of these Walther P38s because I bought those back when they were CZ70 price. Of course, he's obviously going to value, even though he always has to make profit in these trades, and we hope he does, or he's going to go out of business, or any good shop. Just remember that. They always have to make some profit, guys. They're not being greedy. They just have to stay in business. They need to feed their family. But anyways, I bring in a P38 that I might have bought cheaper. Let's just say it's a nice one. I know there's always variables. But if I brought in a decent P38 that I bought for $250, I bet you I could get at least 2, if not probably 3 of those CZ70s off of you. That's how you could do things to better the collection as time goes on, right?
Yeah.
Denny's Plant-Based Journey. Thanks for the super chat, man, and a channel member. Uh-oh, he's calling us Yankees out. He said, don't know about you Yankees, but Obama said all of us in the South cling to our Bibles and guns. Looking at the world lately, most lost their Bibles.
Yeah, that's true.
I definitely agree with you.
Yeah,
definitely. And I don't think he really likes any of us that read the Bible and love guns in the North either, if it makes you feel any better. Romain with the super chat. Thanks, man. Nice to see you, dude. He says, great seeing you two combine forces tonight. Best top-notch channels. Thanks to 2 great channels.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you, man, for sure. There we go. Linda caught that from me. I thought I was going to miss that. MacShot 62 was such a generous super chat. Thanks, dude. You're making me feel terrible. He just sponsored the channel with like 500, 700 rounds of 5.56.
Nice.
And now I say sponsored because you guys are my sponsors, literally. Man. And some Makarov ammo. He says, at 2A EDU, the new Marlin 1895 looks very promising. I agree. What do you know about those?
Those actually, from what I've heard, of course, I have not handled one. I've heard that anybody who's gotten close to them is like super, super, super excited. Like they're getting back to like JM Marlin era. They're even like going back to the old Marlin method of serializing for like the collectors out there. Now, one interesting question I'll pose back to you, and this goes into the vein of what we've been talking about. Will the Remington era Marlin lever guns go up in value or down in value once the Rugers hit the market? Because they won't be made anymore. So will they be looked at as a relic of the Marlin history, as somebody that a Marlin collector has got to have a Remington era, or most people look at them as pretty bad guns? Will they pretty much just be forgotten through history, and they'll be the kind of the forgotten stepchild that nobody wants?
Okay, so I'm going to say they're going to go up for 2 reasons, and here's why. A, they'll go up short term because everyone's going to want a Ruger Marlin that's like much better. They're A, not going to be able to afford it, or B, they just won't be able to get one, or the waiting list is too long. So they're just going to want a piece of the pie, and then you're going to see people that couldn't get these due to all the hype flock to their second choice. Right. So there'll be an instant spike in price because of that.
I agree.
Once Ruger can finally keep up with demand, you can say, well, they'll lose all their value. Maybe a little bit. But they'll still slowly go up in price because we're going to have inflation. And it almost starts to turn into this. Like these little, and I'm not using this in a swearing way. I'm using it properly, guys. These little bastardization versions where it was a screwed up version of what it was supposed to be, right? They actually become future collectibles somehow, because there's this weird attraction to oddball stuff that a certain segment always flocks to. Have you noticed that?
So a good comparison would be like the AR-180s. Do you remember those? There was a Sterling manufactured those, and then Costa Mesa and Sterling at the time, they were like the ones nobody wanted because of the bad welding and the finishing. Everybody wanted the Armalite, the Costa Mesa AR-180.
Yeah.
But now the Sterling ones, I mean, yeah, they're not as high, but they're still, I mean, like $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, whatever they go for, because they're not made anymore, and they were a part of the AR-180 story. And I'm wondering if the Remington version will be part of the Marlin lever gun story, where the Marlin collectors is like, yeah, I've got to have one of the Remington era ones in there, even though it's not as nice, to fill the collection, just to be part of the story here. And I'm wondering if that aspect will happen, because
I think so.
it's a weird thing, because there's a sort of a timeline here. You have the actual Marlin guns, then you have the Remington Marlin guns, and then the Ruger Marlin guns. You're already seeing that the Ruger Marlin guns are better in terms of quality, fit, and finish than the Remington. And if it's a collector of a Marlin who's like, I want an old original Marlin, they're going to gravitate more towards the original Marlin.
But those will never be made anymore. Yeah, those will never be made anymore, though. So people that want to gravitate towards the original ones, only so many people can get those, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to keep going up more.
Price ladder. Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting. I was talking with Randy in the store about that today, and we're kind of like, where will it go? Because it's an interesting circumstance there.
So the original pre-Freedom Group, pre-Remington Freedom Group, those are going up, I think, the most once people realize they can't get a Ruger Marlin. But like we just both said, I think you're going to see some trickle down, and those are going to keep rising up too.
Because they're done. I mean, they're history now. The RM serialized Marlin lever guns are no more. There's no more to be made. So, they're all going to Ruger. So we'll see what happens with those.
Well,
but the AM Marlins are still, the most desired, and always will be.
Yes, and I'm thinking about, even though it won't get any views, because I've realized a while ago, like, people don't like to see interesting guns on YouTube that they would never see otherwise. People usually like to see videos of guns that they're thinking about buying, so they want advice and confirmation of their purchase, or they just bought it and they want to learn about it, or they want a YouTuber to talk it up so they feel good about their purchase. That sums up most of the reason why people watch gun videos. But in spite of that, I was thinking about doing something, and I'm trying to think of a name for the series, and I asked you guys on Locals to help out, but guns that were just like flashes in a pan. I've got a Remington R51 that was an old design, then it was gone forever. Then they brought the R51 back. They were $350, $400 guns. Well, then they stopped making them, and they tanked down to like a too good to be true price of like $169, $179. I grabbed a couple. I've got one new in the box there. But I feel that's a steady, for lack of a better word, investment, because they don't make them anymore. It doesn't matter how much people hated them, how much they jammed, especially with how much they jammed. Meant nobody bought them. So therefore, that Remington R51 that I just bought 2.5 years ago, I think will keep going up, And that's what's crazy about guns. Just because it's a piece of crap does not mean that it doesn't go up in price. And it kind of blows my mind, but it's just kind of the way it is a lot of times, right?
I'm trying to think of probably the worst quality firearm that's valued the highest due to its rarity. There's probably a lot of examples, but what's a really good example of that?
Oh, geez. Like, I'm thinking of a lot of those like 80s, like gangster type guns that have gone up a ton in price, like Calicos and.
So the Calico helical mag guns, those have gone up way high, and those aren't necessarily the greatest. But yeah, I'm talking about something that's stupid expensive, like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. That just was known in its day as being a horrible design.
Well, I don't think it was a terrible design, but like we said earlier, people shunned it like it was terrible. Those Polish Archers, which was the first Beryls, those things were shunned. I remember people made fun of those so darn bad. It was insane.
Yeah.
Somebody else just said Calico. I'm looking at Cobra.
The Calico, what are the A100s with the helical mags? Those have gone up over around $1,000, but that's people kind of laughed at those as trying to be like space guns, and they weren't very good. But
I know something I remember people laughing at back in the day, and I know you've had some of these come through the shop variants, but what about the old Daewoo rifles? Those
really,
things
people didn't like those? I always thought that they had a really good reputation.
They did, but they didn't. I mean, they were. Misha's talked about it. Those were like just up until about 2 years ago, you could buy them for next to nothing.
Yeah, they got really expensive really fast.
I remember
I always regarded those as a pretty good design. The Daewoo, what is it? The A1? No,
the K2 rifle.
The K2, and then the K1A1.
Yeah,
the Carbine.
I remember a time when those were going for $400, and a domestically made AR-15 was going for 1,500, and now things have like more than flipped.
I've had my eye on the K2s and the K1A ones for quite a while, and I've always remembered them being a little pricey, except for the DR200, which was the import era one, or the import ban era, with the thumbhole stock and the feature list, like no muzzle brake and stuff. Those have always been pretty low compared to the K2. But the K2s, I've always kind of liked those. I think that they're not as practical by today's standards, but they're different. They're cool.
I just remember a time though when any import, no matter what it is, was shunned. Maybe not by the collectors or the true gun market, but just people that were casually into guns. They used to shun anything foreign as it's this crap, it's that crap. Buy an AR, buy a Remington 870. Like there's been tons of those people out there.
I wouldn't even say foreign. I would say things that were geared towards a military market, like a civilian version of a military rifle, like the K2. There was like through the 90s, there was a lot of like the whole like AK and AR collecting and stuff was actually very fringe in the gun community. That didn't really, AR-15s and AKs being like in everybody's collection, that didn't really start taking off to like 2008, 2009. Probably with the emergence of the popular video game franchises and stuff, but I don't know, that's just speculation. But you were even looked at in the gun community if you owned like 5 AKs and like ARs, like even the gun community by the most part would look at you as like a paramilitary weirdo. It's like you just need a 1022 and like an 870. What are you doing? And that's changed a lot, which just tells you that the difference in culture, because like everybody's got an AR now and everybody's got something like that.
Yes, I agree, and that's what I meant. I should have actually said that out loud, but I was thinking to myself, what I meant by forum was like Milsurp or Comblock, because certainly there was still the snooty, foreign shotgun, double barrel shotgun guys and drillings and all those types of. So yeah, there was still tons of I used to call them, I still do, gun snobs that would be like, oh, that crappy SKS, that'll never be worth anything. They had a Colt Sporter. Well, here's the thing: some of the Colts in and of themselves have gone up, but I don't know. I think if you bought $1,800 worth of SKSs in 1990, and then bought an $1,800 Colt in 1990, if you look where you'd be at now, I think the SKS guy did a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody talks about the Nambu. You might be talking about the Type 94. There was a famous YouTuber that did a whole thing. A couple people have. Some of the Nambus, and I wish I could touch guns. I have one right over there. I wish I
could too. I could show you both of them right now.
Yes, yes, you're right though. The Nambu is even the one that would just go off, the 94, right? That you could go off by hitting it or whatever.
Yeah, it had an exposed sear, a little trigger bar.
Yeah, the little trigger bar on the outside. You could inadvertently hit it or whatever. So those have actually still continued to climb in price, right? Even though they're considered to be trash and by most people.
They have, but they haven't climbed in price very much. I remember I wanted a Type 94 pretty bad like 10 years ago, and I remember them being around $600.
Okay.
And now they're like around $800. So they've gone from 600 to 800 in like 10 years, which by surplus firearm standards is pretty slow. But they will, and I don't think that this is just in the Nambu pistols. I think this is Japanese firearms at large. I think all Japanese firearms are very undervalued for what they are. Like the Type 2 paratrooper rifle, I mean, around maybe $2,000. I mean, for as few of those that they made, $2,000 for military SERP collecting, I mean, isn't very much money they did not make a whole lot of those. And especially if it's all matching and stuff like that. Arasakas in decent condition can still be found for $300 to $400. So that's been around that price for quite a while. They haven't really moved. A lot of that I know comes down to the ammunition. It's like impossible to find the 7.7 and 6.5. And when you do, it's like $2 to $3 a round. A lot of people use, neck down the 30-06 casing and stuff, but then you got to know how to reload. But Japanese pistols, the Type 14 Nambus, I remember them being like $500 or $600 about 8 or 9 years ago, and now they're up to about $8 again. So they're climbing very, very, very slowly.
Well, there's two reasons I think with the Japanese stuff, because look, guys, this isn't me saying it, but this is what all the elders used to say. I had a lot of uncles and whatnot that served in World War II in the Pacific theaters, and they'd say, I don't want nothing to do with that Jap crap. You guys have heard that. So there was lots of like stigmas, like they fought these people. These people were fighting kamikaze. Look, guys, there was a tension between that country and this country. Obviously, look at Pearl Harbor. So you had that whole generation that were bringing them back home. That generation didn't want nothing to do with that garbage. This was our mortal enemy. People had fought them to the death likewise. So they hated everything to do with it. Well, as those generations have died off, now younger people don't necessarily hold something against the Japanese people like people that were fighting with them. And I get it. There's all different sides of this. I don't want to get into the psychology, but I think that is why they were deemed crap. Well, now we're in a situation where maybe there's people that are like, well, I don't really mind the country of Japan. I'm open to the thought, but now the ammo is completely dried up. And now, so I think that's helping to hold the value down. Don't you?
The ammo is definitely, I mean, it's going to be very expensive to go out and shoot a Type 99 regularly or a Nambu.
But you've heard old folks talk, though, right? Most of them are dead now, but guys that served in the Pacific Theater, they had nothing good to say about that.
Well, that was why even same is true of German firearms. I mean, they were an enemy too, and very much a brutal enemy. And there was a lot of, I mean, people were trading Lugers for packs of cigarettes. You know, it's like you could buy an all-matching K98 at a hardware store. You know, a pick one out of a barrel for $5 sort of thing, which is why so many of them got sporterized. They had no value. They really didn't. But I'm also going to equate that to the rise in popularity of World War II culture in video games and movies with younger generations that see that stuff very, like you said, through a very different scope. That it's so far removed from their own history. You know, a 25-year-old World War II is so far behind in the pages of the history books that the only way to ever get a connection to it is to own those implements that were used, and people are willing to pay a premium for that experience. Whereas the older generations who actually physically brought them home, not only were they there and experienced that themselves, but you know, it's like that may have been a token of a period of time that may be hard to relive, or that there is some hatred towards because of, you know, having to go up against those weapons in combat and see what their friends had to experience. You know, so very different mentalities. That's generally what causes things to increase in value over time. I mean, same is true of a single action army. You know, I don't know what they were back in, you know, 1873, maybe $2, $3, $4. I know with inflation, that's a lot of money, but still compared to what people are paying now, upwards of $10,000 for a mint condition 1873. It's a way to just sort of hold a piece of that time that none of us can ever be connected to in any other way.
No, I totally agree too. And like I said, guns mean things for people too, beyond just shooting them. There is that sentimental value. There is, and I think a lot of too, you know, to give the people that serve, and some of you guys can chime in, right? And I think this goes on with all militaries, even though I've never served, but I know people that have, and I've studied a lot of history. Regardless of what military you're in, your people, because a lot of it is them indoctrinating you to be the best United States troop you can be. All countries do it. They're going to always tell you you have the best weaponry, you have the best training, we're going to win this war. Your enemy is less trained than you. Your enemy has an inferior weapon than you do. And that's why a lot of veterans I know that came back to the United States, especially Vietnam era, even people that continued to serve within the desert, a lot of younger veterans don't really think this anymore, but a lot of the older ones, they're like, the AK's crap. They taught me when I was in the army in Vietnam. The enemy's weapon sucks. The AK's this. The SKS sucks. Like all these things. And I think that's why a lot of people bring home these stigmas with them after they serve. They won the war. They were told how bad the enemy's weapons sucked. So now they come back and they're like, Arasaka, that's crap. German Mauser, that's crap. AK and SKS, that's crap. And that's why a lot of times there's a long time delayed reaction until these things become wanted.
Yeah, I actually get that from a lot of older vets in my store. It's funny you say that. Exactly that. They'll see an AK, and it's almost not that it's almost like a contempt or a hatred for it. But I think that was instilled during that time of serving. You know, like you said, there had to be an element of inferiority placed in the opposition through their weapons, their tactics, their training. Was very common, and they probably if they had the freedoms to go in Vietnam or in China to go into a gun store and pick out an AR-15 or an AK, that their older veterans would probably be saying the same things about the AR-15.
But they were actually right though, because our M16 was jamming and their AK was.
Yeah, their AK. I would have. Yeah, I would
that's just
rather
to
have
tick off
AK,
just to tick off all the AR guys. If they said that, they would have been right. But no. And then look, we've already gone almost 2 hours, dude. So I'm gonna wrap it up with this. But Born to Be a Shooter, Josh, you already know the answer to your question, so that's why I put that up there. He says it's an HK94 collectible. I'm like, no, not at all. Any genuine HK products, guys, 91s, 94s. How about this? Send one of them his way for $1 and one my way for $1. But hey, what's happening, man? That's Frank the Tank right there. What's happening, dude? How you doing, man? You see that on the screen?
Oh, is Frank here?
Hey, up there on the up there, pinned to the screen. Linda pinned it up there. Can you see it on your end or no?
No.
Oh, I guess it doesn't do that for you on StreamYard. So Frank says, great show tonight, guys. And Linda took it from me before I could finish reading it. But Frank said, nice to see you.
Francis Hunt, that's Frank the Tank?
Yes.
Oh, I know him as only exclusively as Frank the Tank. So that's why I didn't understand what we were talking about.
He's saying hi to you. So thanks, man.
Good to see you.
One more thing I wanted to say on the way out. People were talking about like worst gun I ever bought, Lorison. So I want to say this real quick. Just because it's crappy does not mean it's ever going to be collectible. Just sometimes. So Lorison, I can never say never. Probably not going to be collectible anytime soon.
Those are known as pipe bombs, you know.
So stuff like that didn't really have any military history to it. No. So it's complicated, guys. It's complicated.
When the self-destruct button and the trigger are the same thing, it's generally best to stay away.
Yeah, so generally a lot of guns can go up in price, even if they're deemed as crappy. If it's a Lorison, and look, we're not being gun snobs, guys. If there's someone else out there that truly has a Lorison that works, you defend your family, awesome, right?
Yeah, totally. And all jokes aside, they are still more valuable today than they were. I mean, even if a little bit. I think those are going, if you have the original box and everything, around $150 to $200.
So there you go. So actually, still, even then, those were like, oh gosh, I don't know what they cost new, but I remember there was a time when those were like well under $100, like pretty easily.
Oh yeah, but you know, a lot of that too is there may not be a collector's market for having military service or anything. It's the nostalgic market. It's people who, in the 90s and 80s, that was their first gun. That was the one grandpa taught them how to shoot on, and they never intend to shoot it, but they just want one to put in the safe just because they're willing to pay a couple $100 to do that. And you get the nostalgic buyer a lot too. And there's always nostalgic value in almost everything because somebody owned one at some time during the span of their life, and it means something to them.
I actually take back what I just said. I'm kind of saying all this tongue in cheek and joking, guys, because like Lorison for real, but everything Chris said is true. Actually, that'll go full circle and probably go up to eventually. And he's not even joking when he says that for all those reasons. I agree. Mike McClune sending us some good vibes on the way out here. Says we'll have to watch the rebroadcast, miss 90% of the show. Everyone have a good night and see you on Locals tomorrow. Thanks, man. Well, let's put it this way, guys. And again, it's just because I don't want them nuking this at the last minute. I don't even have ads turned on anyways. It's not about that, but you're not supposed to promote certain things on here. So those of you who have been following the Marksman TV channel, you know there's like a huge announcement coming in January. So that's tomorrow, you said, right?
Yeah, there has been a specific link. A lot of people have been clicking saying that something cool was happening in January. That is tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, between about 8 and 8:15 Eastern in the morning, 8 a.m. If you want to know, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just go C2A EDU on Locals.
Yes, I'm going to directly link to that on Locals because we can't link to shops like that here. That's not that I'm not willing to. That is Susan Wiki, right? That has those rules about directly linking, but that's totally awesome. And then obviously, guys, just so you know, I hate to state the obvious, but both in the title of this stream and down below in the description where it says at Marksman TV. So if you've not already done this, make sure you go sub to his channel. Check out all the stuff he does. Awesome content. He does vlog stuff that was just interesting, kind of like entertainment and knowledge. Awesome videos. If you want to get into just pure gun content, he does a weekly used gun review where you guys will see a lot of cool guns that you either do own or have owned or whatever. And It's always a pretty cool mix up of stuff.
I
Right?
missed last week because I'm getting ready for this launch on the weekly used gun review video, but I do have one that'll be up Sunday morning.
So weekly used guns, except for the week that he's getting that site going that all of you really want. So
yeah,
you're not gonna be
I
bad
had
if
to
you-
take a little bit of time to do that. So that's why I was not on last week, but I filmed most of this week's episode today, and I'll finish up the rest of it tomorrow and get that up for you guys Sunday morning for those of you who watch it.
Yes, sounds good, man. So definitely check his channel out. Check out that site that I will directly promote on Locals, and I'm looking forward to going over there too, man. I hope it works out good for you.
I appreciate that.
Anything else you want to say to him before we get off?
Thank you so much for having me on the famous 2A EDU live stream. It's been a pleasure being here, and hopefully we got most of everybody's questions. Probably not, but I had a good time, so thanks for the invite.
Probably not, but I had an awesome time too. Thanks for coming, man.
For sure.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching,
Take it easy.
and have a good one.